wolf dogs, coy dogs. Today we will discuss the practice of breeding wolves or coyotes to dogs. What are the benefits, the drawbacks, and my thoughts about it. So first starts with the why. The genetic base of many a dog breed is seriously compromised because it is that narrow, and also a lot of problems occur. Whereas, for example, a German Shepherd often doesn't live to the age of 10 or 11. Wolves can live in captivity almost to the age of 20. They are similar size, also similar in looks, and that gives you an example of the health issues of better genetics. So this is a big factor. Also, there's another factor, that's that the wolves and coyotes are very good at living and fending for themselves, so they are very well balanced. They're also quite hard to cope with, for example, things like hot weather, humidity, cold. And another fact is that some people really like the looks of that primitive wolf-like or coyote-like to a lesser degree exterior. So the breeding of coy dogs is normally not performed. There are examples like the blue lacy that is rumored to have some coyote blood in them as a working dog. Should be, if it is there, should be very diluted. But other examples are the crossbreeding between wolves and especially German Shepherds to create different types of wolf dogs. And lately also some are breeding them to a more of a polar type of dog, for example Alaskan Malamute or Huskies, to also give that more Arctic wolf type of appearance. I'm talking about appearances here, but it's not always an appearance. Sometimes there are, for example in Russia, programs to develop a working type of German Shepherds that are harder and better suited to roam and protect the borders, and then they interbred them with wolves as a very good way to get stronger sense, more natural sense that a predator has, also better health, better coping mechanisms, and then more efficiency that they eat less foods, and also the drive and the ferocity could be enhanced. And that gives you some examples there. Also, I leave it out of the comments a lot because it is harder to see, but sometimes also other wild dogs are used in breeding practices. For example, by creating the Kelpie and Australian cattle dog, they use some dingo blood, which is a feral, so to say, type of dog, but also has some overlap with Indian dolls, which is like a red wolf type of dog. Still not a wolf, but it's a little bit similar, only smaller. So that could also be explored, especially in the outback. They use this for getting a harder herding breed that was more suitable to the terrain, also to the heat and to the limited access to fresh water. So this has bred very hard Kelpies and Australian cattle dogs, and if you look at the working range, you still see a lot of very nice traits there. So that being said, normally those crosses can range from 50%, so straight crosses, but normally they just select those that still have the beneficial factors and then reintroduce them to other dogs. For example, the German Shepherd cross wolf, then they breed it back again to a pure German Shepherd, and then they have only 25% German Shepherd left, and that will often wane even more, but they keep the phenotype, so the exterior looks of this wolf type dog, and still also a lot of the benefits because the genetic enrichment is still there, even with 25%. That's huge. So that's also what I'm being an advocate for, is not to get too much wolf in unless you need something that is close to the normal things that a wolf does, being both in the purpose, for example the hunting type, but also to being the character of the wolf, which is often not that easy to be handled by humans, and also quite hard to train and to keep off, for example, livestock. I would not be an advocate to, for example, to breed a border collie to wolf and then expect a full cross to be gentle with the sheep. This would be a very bad idea, just to give you an example. And both working the sheep and hunting as a wolf need a lot of prey drive. But for example, 25% wolf and 75% greyhound could be a very nice dog, because those dogs those lurchers would normally be used as a running type of dog. Then both the wolf and the greyhound offer great speed and also great prey drive, and it's more of a hunting disposition, completely different to others. So I would be an advocate, especially if you have a breed that's close to the purpose that you want. For example, a hunter, you could go far routes by introducing a lot of wolf blood, so even 25% would still bring you a very good lurcher type of dog with better feet and also better protection and more killing ability than a pure greyhound will. And still both would pretty much align. But for example, if you need a defense type of dog that you want to manage, it also carries wolf blood. For example, Serbian defense dog, you can look it up. I also made a video about this breed. I really like it. It's essentially a band dog, but it only has a small degree of wolf genes. So for example, if that is like 5 to 6% the wolf genes, they still offer a lot of genetic additions and better health, but they don't determine the breed. They're just there to support it. Whereas if you have a high level of wolf blood there, normally a wolf would rather flee than fight, whereas a band dog should be fighting, should be staying there even if they go and get stuff. Also for a pit dog, if you have a lot of wolf blood in there, it will just cur out. If you have a combat type of dog, but because they even use pitbull types against wolves that were 2 or 3 times its size, pitbull won, and the wolf didn't want to continue anymore, just wanted to flee. This is not something that you would look into a certain type of dog. Also, if you get too much of wolf blood into a shepherd type of breed, I think you will be in big problems. If you get like 25% wolf blood in your Alaskan Husky, that could be a good thing. Then you get a dog that only needs to run there. And if you have like 75% of good sled dogs in there, you could go a far way with 25% additional wolf blood. And you could also resolve the difference in thickness of the chest for pulling ability with the other breeds, the other 75%. So wolf blood could be a very good addition to a breeding program. It should be kept at a low level in almost all cases. So more than 25% would never be one of the things I would opt for, even for the most extremely fitting cases, for example the lurcher that I mentioned. But also the longevity of the wolf can also be very much contained even with 25% or less. Then you have almost all the benefits without the drawbacks of a dog that is shy of people or wants to flee instead of fighting, had to stand his ground, or in that case more or less courageous, or a dog that will roam and will just escape every time it can and will destroy the neighborhood, or is a menace for society. For example, if it is seeing children or people as food, like the wolves can do, this would not be a good thing, you can imagine. So wolf dogs bring enormous responsibilities, especially the first crosses, and you need, in my opinion, at least a second cross of 25% or less wolf to be functional as a performance animal. And if you are keeping it in a region where there is more focus on social areas or social interaction, I would go and advise to get a lot less wolf blood in. So this is still talking percentage of genotype, the genes that are there, but there's also something like phenotype. For example, if you have a cross between two breeds, one looks a lot more like the father, one looks a lot more like the mother, and the other one could be, the third one could be a mix between the two. So not really the father, not really the mother. But you can imagine if you select wolves, the pups from wolves and dogs, so the first cross, the ones that look more like a wolf will probably act more like a wolf and also carry a more dominating genetic stamp. So even genetically they would be, the brother and sister, the siblings, would be carrying as much wolf as the other, and they do, but one has clicked a lot more than the other, and that phenotype, so how the dog looks, acts, and other points. For example, even if the wolf dog doesn't look like a wolf but acts like a wolf and howls all the time, for example, doesn't bark, or just has all those wolf-like behaviors, this could be adding a lot more wolf-like temperament as one would think of to get, looking purely at genetics. So for the example that I mentioned, if you have a wolf crossed with a greyhound, and then you look at the litter and you would select those that almost completely look like a wolf and breed that back to a greyhound, it could be that 25% wolf hybrid looks more like a wolf and 75% greyhound than the first cross that was thrown back more to the greyhound, if that makes sense. So then the first cross already has 50% wolf, so double that of that second generation, but it was selected out of a dog that really went to phenotype of the greyhound. And that is also the thing what they do often when breeding, for example, Czechoslovakian wolf dogs. They selected those that still had the wolf-like appearance. So even if the genotype percentage was low, the phenotype percentage was high. And there's also something that you can play with. So if you like, for example, the wolf-like appearance or some of the properties of the wolf, but you don't want the bad characteristics, you could add a lot of dog and keep adding a lot of dog. So for example, the third cross, if you would cross it again to a greyhound, would leave out only 12.5% of wolf genetics, but still that lurcher could look a lot like a more lanky, faster type of wolf, more like a coyote, but then a lot bigger. And that's something that you can play around with as well. So it's not only genetics, but also the phenotypic expression thereof. I left out a lot of the coyotes because normally people are not that much into coyotes because they have a more negative appearance, and also often they like the wolves more because they are easier to handle and also easier to train. There's a reason that they started with wolves to make domestic dogs instead of with coyotes. It's not only the geographic region, but also a lot of how easy it is to train a wolf compared to a coyote. A coyote is a lot more solitary type of animal, which is harder to control for us humans. But of course, coyotes are even more adept to different terrains and they are a lot smaller, so they could, for example, if you would cross them to I mentioned the lurcher with wolf blood for the greyhound, but it would be a better choice to use Coyote blood perhaps in a lurcher based on whippet blood, to not get too much size in. But even then you could just get the wolf percentage a lot lower. So I would normally always recommend to go, if you want this route, go with the route of wolf blood, because coyotes are very hard to keep functioning well, and also offer, despite the smaller size, quite a risk. So for children, other people, and they are very well adapted as well at surviving, which is a big plus. But once these wolf hybrids go feral, I think those with Coyote blood will have a better, even better way of surviving, because they are so adaptable. And also where wolves are extinct, you see that coyotes come in again, and even wolf coyote crosses are now getting into areas where wolves would never be able to survive. So that is a thing that the Coyote blood brings. And of course, normally when there are a lot of wolves, you don't see that many coyotes, because they are getting killed by the wolves, which is another fact that many people don't like that much. You could hunt coyotes with wolves, domesticated wolves, but the other way around would be quite a pity, mostly. Okay, I hope you like this Thoreau video that I tried to make. I tried to nip on the coyote as well, also a little bit on the dingo. On the Australian case of a wild dog there are other examples like Carolina dog. That could be a good way to introduce some additional genes without having all the troubles of a really wild animal. Because also the Carolina dog, I made a video about this dog as well, also known as American dingo, has a lot of the benefits of a wild creature, also genetically, but not so much of the drawbacks, because it is a lot easier to handle and also place in a household. I'm not saying it will be very easy, but in a relative sense a lot easier than, for example, wolf or coyote mix. Okay, the dog here is a Patterdale Terrier, Estacado, 1.5 years old. He's a Fel Terrier type of dog, so a dog that goes below ground, so killing other canines like foxes especially, but foxes and dogs do not interbreed. They're different species altogether, and they are not compatible genetically, so that explains that. Have a nice day. Bye bye.